handled through eminent domain and condemned or whatever, and they could say, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to execute eminent domain.
That decision would have to be made prior to the redeveloper's agreement being executed. So you can't. So once you designate the redeveloper and you adopt the redeveloper's agreement, if you're going to have those powers, the ability to exercise those powers, that's going to be set forth in that agreement.
Right.
As it relates to the redevelopment area in general.
So if it's in the redevelopment plan, and there's a property that's, say, worth $50,000, and the person wants $1 million for it, right? And if eminent domain is in the plan, the developer could say, this person isn't being reasonable, and they would bring it back to council, and council would have the right to say, we want the redevelopment to proceed. This property owner isn't being reasonable, and the property owner would be encouraged because of the potential of the eminent domain to settle for a fair market price. Is that correct?
It would have to be also in the agreement itself, the redeveloper's agreement. So you can have
Right.
you can have those practices, but if it's assuming that it's also in the agreement between the municipality and the redeveloper, then yes.
Okay. So if eminent domain isn't part of the redevelopment plan, and that person who has a $50,000 house wants $1 million for it, that stops the development cold, right?
And the person unwilling to sell it, depending upon how vital that is to the redevelopment project, yes, that could happen.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was wondering. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Morris said, Mr. Councilman Lutz, would you like to address him?
Yes, I'd like to address the
Please.
concerning, please. So that could mean that it could be ending in court, and it could be years?
The scenario that Mr. Morris said?
Right.
Right, so if you don't, if the ability to utilize the powers of condemnation in order to effectuate the purposes of the redevelopment plan aren't reserved initially, and they don't have that, then you can't exercise those rights. So if you had a holdout, property owner said, I don't want to sell my property, or I don't want to sell for $1 million, if it's not worth $1 million to the redeveloper, and you can't come to arm's length transaction, then you couldn't force the sale.
Right.
You could not force the sale. If you have those powers in the plan, and you have that situation, that's still a last resort. You don't jump to condemnation. The developer has an obligation to attempt arm's length transaction, fair market value, appraisals, and all that stuff. You can't come in and say, I'll give you $100 for a property that's worth $50,
Right.
and then use condemnation.
But it still could be held in court
Yes.
for years.
Probably not for years.
Mr. Morris said,
It could go to court.
Mr. Morris said, do you believe it's appropriate to take somebody else's land?
The town has to make a decision.
Sure, we have. And it sounds to me like you disagree with that decision, which is your right. But I will tell you this. You're correct that it does come before council, but it may not come before this council. And with the way things are going right now in town, I would be worried if it went before another governing body, especially if it were my family's home. Because I have a feeling you'd take it. And that can't happen. You know how the mayor says, not on my watch? Well, we ran on that platform, and the last thing I will ever let you do is take that 90-year-old woman's home from her to put a Ferris wheel in. And I'm sorry that you feel differently. Sir, I was born here, raised here, met my wife here, and married her here. And I'll probably die here.
Can I ask Councilman Wenner another question?
Council President, may I ask you a question? Council President, may I comment?
Yes, sir.
You said it would stop the redevelopment, so I don't want to make your comment look like, Council, you're gonna trash the redevelopment. Councilor Wenner, could the plan move forward if the developer decided to build around a property that did not want to sell?
Yes, and again, we're talking, you know, hypotheticals that fit any situation you want to occur. I mean, you have a hypothetical where the property owner refuses to sell. You have a hypothetical where the property owner does sell, or not selling kills the plan, or not selling, you know, the plan still succeeds. So it's really a matter of procedurally what has to happen in order to have the power of condemnation. And you saw it in Long Branch, you see it in cities east where you have the need for condemnation. And actually, the whole condemnation redevelopment study, that requirement that's in 12A, came out of a case where the housing authority, it's in Harrison, did a redevelopment plan, put it out, designated an area to be redevelopment, reserved upon themselves the right for eminent domain, but then notify the property owners that they were reserving upon themselves the right of eminent domain. The time period for appealing the adoption of the redevelopment plan passed, the redevelopment plan began to get implemented, and a property owner who had a successful business in that area, an automotive shop, found out that they were trying to take his land through eminent domain. He didn't want to sell. He challenged, he was well outside the time frame for challenging. The court said, you know what, that's a serious property right that you're being deprived of. You should have had notice that this may have been used by the municipality. And that's why you have the legal framework that we have today, where you have to give notice. Now, as to the efficacy of using eminent domain and whether it's a good tool or not, that's a policy decision. It certainly is a tool.
Right. You're well versed in the area, fairly well versed in the area of redevelopment. I can tell by the way you're responding to the questions, and I appreciate that. Do you know another major redevelopment project?
Your time's up, Mr. Morissette. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Timmons.
Bill Timmon, 230 South Main Street. Not what I wanted to talk about originally, but as a footnote to that, the bar that is encircled by Rockefeller Center, they had to build around that 3-story building. There's a little old lady down in Atlantic City who made them build one of the casinos around her house. So, in fact, if they fight it, they can win. But what I'm speaking on now is where do we stand with Norfolk Southern and the transit lot? Has that come up recently?
Mr. Timmons, that's not on the agenda this evening. You'd have to bring that up on the 18th.
The reason I'm asking is I'm with the PRRC, Railroad, and they're looking also to extend their line, which they have to get approval, and I'm wondering if that's part of it, or...
Mr. Timmons, unfortunately, that's not on the agenda, so you would have to either speak to us afterwards. Okay. Mr. Burson.
Hi, Emil Burson, 94 Bowman Street in Phillipsburg. I have a question for the council president about a comment that you made when Mr. Morissette was speaking there. When you were talking about eminent domain, if I recall correctly, you either said, we have decided or council has decided. And I'm wondering, and it sounded like a decision has been made about whether to support eminent domain or not. I'm wondering when that decision was made.
So, Mr. Burson, I imagine you're trying to trap me into telling you that we speak behind closed doors and we made this decision. So I'm basing my opinion on the public comments made by 4 out of 5 members of council, because all 4 of them have publicly stated they do not believe in eminent domain. None of us speak behind closed doors, nor do we make backdoor handshake deals, just so you're aware.
So, right, but you're basing it on comments that people made at council meetings. When the final decision comes to be made, some of those people may change their mind.
Sure.
I don't know. I just wanted to clarify that it's not a decision that has been made publicly by the council. There has not been discussion among a majority of the council.
I've already said that hasn't happened.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't know you had decided at all.
Dan Boyce, 244 Irwin. Regarding the redevelopment, it blows my mind. I've gone to planning board meetings, I've seen the plan, I've come here and I've seen the plan. It's a big picture, And I look at it, and I guess now I know what it was like taking acid back in the 70s. It's a picture is what it is. It's fake. It's Jetson walkways up in the air, you know. Unless we're getting spacely sprockets to come into town, I don't know why we're dealing with something in the future here. We're like decades behind the Flintstones. I said that before. You can do so much in this town. I agree with Mayor Ellis about putting town hall downtown, but it's in the, you know, and your development near the bridge is wrong. There's no logic to it whatsoever. I could take this over to the daycare, and the kids over there, the pre-kindergarten kids could probably come up with a much better plan, okay? I went for a walk down South Main Street, and the parking lot that's right off of Main where sick rates, right there at Chappelle Park. Mayor Ellis mentioned it before. It's such a great idea about building a parking garage. You could put a 3-4 story garage there. It's not an eyesore. Nobody's going to be looking out their window, and it's going to be obstructing anybody's vision to anything, really, other than train tracks. Okay? From there, start. You could then approach the business next, where the tax bureau is and the ice cream shop is and those homes there, and buy them. You get those properties from there down to Viking. If you could buy that, that would make a heck of a town hall right there. There you are in the center of town that's already has businesses started, that's already thriving, and start your redevelopment there. That's just something that even a single-digit IQ can figure that out, really. And you know, you use it as your hub and branch out. I've listened to it. They want to bring restaurants in and this and that. You have to think. Look at Easton right now. Realistically, Easton is killing themselves with their restaurants right now. Being in the business for 40-some years, people only have so much money to spend. Easton has been putting restaurants in, and restaurants in, and restaurants in. Now every time they put a restaurant in, they close another one. Okay? You're going to bring a restaurant in, you're going to bring 2 restaurants in, you're going to see someone go out of business. You're going to bring another restaurant in, you're going to see Sullivan's go out of business. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You have businesses that are here now when you have nothing in this town. You want to keep those businesses. Building up, you look at the town, go downtown Quakertown. Downtown Quakertown has a main street. Go into Nazareth, they have a main street. Hellertown, they have a main street. None of the buildings were tore down and built up with space-age walkways and everything else. They just redid it. It all. You ever been to Cooperstown? You have? You know what I'm talking about then, right? What looks like, what, 1930s, 1940s? I understand they've got the Baseball Hall of Fame there and that. But, you know, once upon a time, I remember hearing that Phillipsburg was going to have a railroad museum. And the property was taken from it for a development that never happened. Maybe a good idea would be to take the Agway building and give it to the Railroad Museum. Let the museum go in there. Bring something for people to come here in town. I'm not saying that the bridge area can't be developed, but you're going to develop it. You know, last year, Kelly Poshidi did, and her group or crew, whatever you want to call it, did such a bang-up job with Pork Roll Festival. It really was good for the town. But the sad thing was, people parked up at Joe's. They parked at that parking lot up at Sickray Street, whatever it is, or Market Street, and then they walked past all these buildings that are empty. You almost, I mean, that was kind of really a slap in her face. She went out of her way to do such a good job. I'm not saying just her, but anybody, and then you bring them past empty things. Same thing. I mean, this is, how do you even follow that? You bring people in for Polar Express and they want to walk past dirty buildings. Or maybe before the redevelopment plan goes into effect, maybe the town needs to look at a homeless shelter. It's a common sense thing. Maybe it's time to start using common sense. Mr. Amy mentioned about tax money being lost. Yes, that's true, but you know, you can spend all the money you want to redevelop everything. Until you straighten up the problems in this town, and we stop the games, stop the childishness, nobody's going to come here and spend money. Besides that, what developer's gonna come into town where they drive 2 blocks and the whole suspension falls out from under their car? It smells like they're parking beside 22 outhouses and they can't get a clean glass of water.
Your time's up. Thank you. Well, we're just getting started, right? Okay, is there anyone else? Okay. With that being said, we can close the public comments portion and move forward. The first ordinance up for discussion is ordinance number 2018-14, which is an ordinance of the town of Phillipsburg entitled Open Space. Councilman Lutz, I will go ahead and start with you. Do you have any?
Well, I'm just going to say, like I said before, a couple meetings before, this was supposed to be for our kids, our playgrounds, repair our playgrounds, fixing them up, making the best for the kids that the kids don't have today. And all of a sudden, it just totally changed about taking property rights. I am not for that, and I will not vote on this at all, as long as that's in there. This was supposed to be for the kids and kids only, and that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Vice President.
I have a lot,
You have a lot of time.
so I will start with the resolution that was passed as the referendum, and it's going to follow up to what I think Councilman Woods is looking for. So if you'll give me that time, I'm going to go there. So the purpose of, and this is what the voters voted for, by the way. Improving recreational facilities, number 1. Protecting water quality in rivers and streams. Historic preservation, number 3. Conserving natural areas, 4. And developing, maintaining, and acquiring lands for recreation and conservation in the town of Phillipsburg only. That was the intent. When you walk around on football fields and tell 200 parents that their kids are playing on a terrible field and that they vote yes, that field will get fixed, the first thing I better see on here is that we're going to fix what we have. So that's what I wrote. I rewrote the entire thing. Here's where I started. Well, first I fixed the borough tax rate to the town of Phillipsburg under funding, under purpose and utilization of funds. I basically scratched the entire first 2 paragraphs and rewrote it to read pursuant to NJSA 40:12-15.7. The annual levy shall be used for the development and maintaining of lands for recreation, period. Number 1. Number 2, protection of water quality in rivers and streams. Number 3, acquisition of land for recreation or conservation. Number 4, the preservation of historic properties, structures, facilities, sites, areas, or objects. The paragraph stating the land acquired under the trust fund shall be utilized for categories of open space, including park recreation, I found to be okay as it is. Following up to that, it goes into the Open Space Rec Advisory Committee. I modified this quite a bit as well. Okay. Well, there was a typo because it said 7 and said 10 in parentheses, so I adjusted that thinking we probably need 10 people. Member of Town Council appointed by Town Council, good with that. A member of the Phillipsburg Land Use Board appointed by the mayor, okay with that. I'd like to change the next 2 as follows, to 3 residents of the town of Phillipsburg appointed by council, and 3 property owners or residents of the town of Phillipsburg appointed by the mayor. Rather than breaking them up, let's just give everybody the even amount and divide them up in 2. 1 representative from the Phillipsburg Housing Commission, Historical Commission, appointed by council rather than the mayor. 2 alternate members, 1 appointed by the mayor, 1 by council. And I'd like to add in here, I did reference an existing New Jersey statute on this. They always include the town business administrator, so I think it would be good to have the town business administrator, who is the principal person. Well, I know we don't have one, but we're supposed to by law, so we need one. So we should allow for that person to be there. And that would be my suggested changes there, along with council and the mayor serving as an ex officio.
Stick them down.
Yes.
11.
That would be with alternates. It would be 10 total, just as it was. I just edited 4 property owners to 3 to include the town administrator. Also adding this clause, and again, I pulled this out of New Jersey code. Citizens appointed by the mayor and council shall not hold any other municipal office, position, employment, or be appointed to any other town board in the municipal government. I also made, thank you.
Council Vice President, doesn't that conflict with the historical commission appointment?
It would,
Okay.
so we may need to pull that person out. Or make him an ex officio.
This way you still get their advice.
But you could also carve a specific exception for that board, as a non-political board, I think it would be okay.
We thought about it, yeah.
The historical commission is non-political?
Yeah, but I believe there's
But
a provision in there as well that they're not allowed to serve on any other boards, right?
Except for planning board, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's see, additions. I don't think twice annually is sufficient for something that's taking this amount of taxpayer dollars in use for the need that we have. I think 4 times annually would be minimally more acceptable than twice a year. And I had some other edits here where one borough shouldn't be used. We are a town. Other than that, I think that pretty well makes me feel a lot better about it. And there was a clause, and again, I would run this past council for the okay. There's a clause in the one I had that said the fund shall also be permitted to accept donations and testamentary bequests, so that if people want to make donations to help the longevity of a preservation project, they could do that. But that was all I saw. But that would make me much happier. I know I was one of the ones most adamantly opposed to this because all it talked about was acquisition of property. I'm not opposed to it being there in its entirety, just being the primary objective was my acquisition. So everyone's semi-comfortable with that. I will retype it all and submit it. I just didn't have time to do that before.
Council Vice President, I think the only other amendments we need to make are under D, just to expand the duties and functions to include those recommendations for the improvement of existing facilities as opposed to just acquiring. But other than that, everything you said sounds pretty good.
Thank
To me,
you.
at least. Thanks.
Yes, the duties and funds go hand in hand. Yes, I did edit all that.
Councilman Davis, want to assume that you're good?
What's that?
Are you good?
Yeah, no, I thank you very much, Council Vice President, for the edits you've made to this.
Okay. Councilman McVeigh?
What number, Council Vice President, what number are we still standing on? 10 for the board member?
I believe it would. If anybody has any further comment on the, either we could put an exception in here for the only exception being the historical commission, or we make that an ex officio and we add one. I think we should stick at 10.
Okay, I'm a big fan of the ex officio on that appointment. In addition to, are you counting the BA as one?
I was.
That's right, my numbers are crossed. Okay, very good.
Since we have council, we could put the mayor as an elected measure.
No, I think it's best to keep the mayor and the council as non-voting members, as ex officios. It keeps the politics out of it. Councilman McVeigh, were you finished?
Yeah, are you saying that the council appointment and the mayor appointment of the boards, I'm not a big fan of the exception, like let's have this committee, but they can't be on boards, but there's an exception to this. There's an exception to that, so I'm not a fan of gray areas. If you're gonna have it.
Got a suggestion for who to put?
Well, I mean, you have the number, you'd have the number 10, if you start picking off, as far as who could be on what boards or whatever, maybe that number gets dropped. And do you want an even number?
So go to 9?
I think it would be best.
I mean, I'm saying any even number, any odd number, I'm asking, we're
So
sitting
we
at
could just do
10.
9.
If you have 9, you have a tiebreaker.
What, yeah, how are you breaking any ties on
Don't if you have
the
9.
10?
I think the issue would probably be like us with dying before.
Okay.
And further, yes, what is the interaction that we foresee the Recreation Advisory Committee that we're going to discuss later having with this board? Because I feel like their missions are not synonymous, but certainly intertwined with each other. And I want to ensure that the Recreation Advisory Committee is able to keep this board apprised as well.
So say work hand in hand.
Yeah, I certainly think that based on what I think council's vision is for the Recreation Advisory Committee, they're going to be instrumental in providing data and information to this board. So I further wonder if it's wise for us to exclude members of that committee from this as well, only because it seems like they would be the most knowledgeable in terms of the recreational facility requirements.
So I think that the Recreational Advisory Committee could choose a liaison similar to that we do in an advisement capacity to attend their meetings.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there is some input, there's a channel of input, yeah.
Right. Okay. Councilman Pay, anything else?
Good, sir.
I'm good, you guys knocked that one right out of the park. So, Rich,
Yep, Council Vice President, if you just want to, you can do it now, but
I'll send it.
send it. Yep.
Yeah, it was ordinance of Jersey City, actually, is where I based it out.
okay, so then we will move forward to the ordinance number 2018-13, which is the ordinance of the Town of Phillipsburg, County of Orange, State of New Jersey, deleting and replacing Chapter 5, Administration of Government, Article 12, Department of Recreation, Section 91, Recreation Advisory Committee of the Code of the Town of Phillipsburg, and deleting Section 92. Councilman Lutz, do you have anything?
No, no.
Okay. Council Vice President,
You like hearing me talk tonight.
you did a lot of work, man.
I did a lot of work.
Floor is yours.
Why we're here, right?
Yeah.
All right. Class of members. I'm okay down to class of members. The Class A wasn't defined at all, only the Class B was. So I don't know what we want that definition to be. My only thought was I'd like to see some of the other recreational needs of the town covered through this, such as a representative from the senior center to handle recreation needs for that group. Possibly somebody to represent on the special needs so that that could be accommodated. So this isn't strictly youth-based. I think somebody possibly, the Department of Recreation should definitely have a representative. I don't know if that's what the thought was in Class A of picking people directly through the town or other organizations. So thoughts were Department of Recreation, possibly DPW supervisor because they maintain the buildings and grounds of the recreational facilities. So then they're in the know on what's happening and they know what's possible. And I actually had Councilman Davis read my mind, a member of the Open Space Committee on there. But I don't know what the thought was. I didn't have my notes. Councilman Davis was the one that introduced Class A and Class B. So those were my questions. And the Class B, from youth organizations, 50 or more athletes. I am not comfortable with council shall so appoint said representative subject to the requirements of 592A. I'd rather see submit to council and have advice and consent of council on the approval that gets submitted from the youth organizations. And I believe we allocated 5 members, but we only currently have 4 organizations. So that would leave 1 vacancy. Unless I'm missing somebody, you've got the youth soccer club,
I think you said that.
football, Still Hill, Burketown. That covers the youth that are referenced under Class B.
Residents as well, like you members, but that's,
So would they be in Class A?
yes.
So we need to come up with something to call this, residents or other interested party.
Oh, Class A members.
But we should define it. So there's a qualification.
So define further.
Yeah, we need a qualification. I mean,
I would agree. There definitely.
you have to have some qualification to serve on a board. I would think.
That, and I don't believe in the conflicts as well. We are going to take a look at 140-8 and 140-9 too upon passing 2018-13.
Which one is that?
They were the background checks.
Yes, we have to do that too. But that wasn't on the agenda, so. The only other notes I had were under purpose and duties, number 4, rules and regulations for the public use of parks, recreation areas, and playgrounds that should be considered for adoption or ordinance by council. So if there's something they discover that we should do, such as the smoking policy, they could enforce that, so we talk about it and bring it to our attention. The annual report, I struck out in conjunction with its budgetary responsibilities because we did take those away. There were no budgetary requirements. We removed that previously. And that was all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Councilman Davis.
I think, and well taken that we should expand beyond the scope of just the youth organizations, as recreation does include, our adults in town. So I agree with that amendment. The only thing that I'm tepid on is the advised consent for Class B. If we are going to not accept members from organizations who appoint them through their own processes, I think that we should have a set list of requirements that would give us grounds to reject such a candidate. I know that we don't always agree with all the organizations, but they certainly deserve the representation that they so choose to come to this committee. Otherwise, I think all the amendments that Council Vice President made are satisfactory.
Councilman, I have to politely disagree with regard to the Class B, and I think we know why. And without getting too much into it, we still have coaches in this town and board members still in this town that allowed a gentleman to coach who should not have coached, right? So I think that for the sake of the children and their safety,